Right, folks. Hello, hello, hello. Oh, this is really weird. My name's Kay, Queer Punk. You've probably walked past the incredibly colourful stall right as you walked in the main entrance. I'm going to talk to you today about the feel of power. You have no idea how proud of myself I was when I thought of the title of this talk. I thought that was an excellent name. To give you a bit of a heads up, the feel of power. We're going to talk a lot about connection and intimacy and things like that, and how we build that through toys, and how we build that through the language of design and things like that. My background is as a designer, as an engineer. A lot of what we're talking about today is going to be grounded in good design theory. So actually, when we design something, how do we design it so that actually it makes that connection more concrete, more explicit, and it builds that connection, and we build it going forwards. That's what we're going to talk about. And obviously, because I'm a massive nerd, we're going to throw some design theories in there. We're going to link some different bits of my degree. We're going to link bits of that in there because why not? And talk about how we build that connection and what we do to make good toys and toys that last. 3 bits to what we talk about today. We're going to go form and function. So actually, how does form and function change the connection you have to toys, to your partner, things like that? We're going to go materials and movement. So how does the material choice change it? How does the way a toy moves change it? How do we design for that? And design as a relationship, and actually what good design looks like to build a relationship. So something a little bit different. And I've got a huge box of toys to show off and play, because what would be the point of doing this if I didn't get to show off my toys and try and do the really hard sell, you know? Because that's the fun bit, isn't it? That's why we're all here. Well, some of us. So part number 1, form and function, is the kind of the crux of it, isn't it? I'm a massive nerd about this stuff. My degree's in design and engineering and things like that. So this is my happy place talking about this. So bear with me. We're going to rattle through this. We're going to talk about some theories and how they link in to what you do. And number 1, the Bauhaus movement, one of my favorite movements. We talk a lot about form follows function. Actually, if you can design something really pretty, that's wonderful. Lots of people can draw a pretty picture. But actually, how do you design something that works really well and is beautiful? And I think that's one of the key points we go for here. We can make really pretty toys, but actually, how do we make a toy that works well first? And that's kind of the crux of where I come from as a designer, as a maker, as a business owner, is all of my products should work well first and then be beautiful. It's pointless making something beautiful that people put in their kit bag and never get out because they don't like it, they don't like what it does, they don't like how it handles, and things like that. And that's kind of it. That's kind of the crux of our toy design. And the design, the form of our toy, informs absolutely everything that comes next. Because actually, if it sits well in the hand, if it balances well, if it moves well, that connection that we're getting is so much stronger. And a great example of this is a flogger. This is a standard weight flogger. Actually, we talk about form follows function on this. My handles are not huge and bulky. Lots of makers make really big handles because a heavy toy is going to hit harder and things like that. But actually, can you grip a big handle well? A can of Coke's going to slide out of your hand an awful lot easier than this. We talk about good design. We talk about making something that sits in your hand, making something that's intuitive to grip. You can drop it in either place. You can go back there, and you can have that wonderful sort of poi experience. You can choke up and do really pinpoint movements. We talk about design, we talk about form, and actually that design, that shape is important. A pretty handle's lovely, but if you can't grip it, if you can't swing it, if you get tired, if it's too short and your wrist's choking up, it becomes a really unpleasant experience for you. And I think really obviously, if we lean into the bit of the almost psychology aspect of it, if you as a top are using a toy that you're not comfortable with, that you have to grip and twist and change your grip of, that's taking you out of your scene. That's losing that connection. And that's a really big thing for design. So kind of my point with most of my toys is, I want it to be easy to use, easy to hold, easy to play with. And that's balance as well. Where does your flogger balance? Mine sits about there. Enough forward mass that it swings, but not so much forward mass that I'm carried forwards by it. Really important distinction that makes that connection nice and enjoyable. Because if you're flogging someone and every time you swing you're overbalancing and you're moving forwards, That makes that seem really hard. So when we're buying toys, obviously, do this with acknowledgement from the person that you're stood by their stall. You need to pick them up, you need to feel them, you need to experience them, you need to swing them, I would say is the big thing. I would really encourage you, obviously, again, being safe, making sure you're in an area where you're not going to hit someone, pick it up and swing it, because actually, that form follows function rule. It should work well. It should work well. And it's hard, because we don't always know what it's going to feel like until we've swung it. And we're designing experiences here, aren't we? We're trying to think about how this is going to be as an experience for someone to use. We're not too worried about the prettiness of it if it's rubbish. It's going to sit in the bottom of your kit bag. You're not going to use it. And we can do loads of design theory on this. We can go to Japan. We can talk about balance theory. We can talk about harmony theory and things like that. But actually, really simply, if we can make a toy that looks good, functions well, balances well, and is easy to use, it's going to let us build a connection with someone that we would really, really struggle to have. That Japanese theory, that harmony theory, is a really nice one. I think it's really important. And you see it a lot in really good design. Architecture, symmetry, things like that is important. I try and do that in my handles. If we have a curve here, we use the same curve at the other end. We have a taper here, we have that same taper at the other end. Something that's going to be aesthetically pleasing, pretty good visually, is going to be something you reach for, something you look at, as well as something you're more likely to buy, which I think is an important thing to say, isn't it? Moving swiftly on from that, ergonomics, balances like that, my background is human factors design, ergonomic design. How do we make toys that fit in your hand, are comfortable and things like that? Again, big one is size, big one is balance. You need to pick it up and use it. My encouragement to you is, for those of you that are potentially newer to the scene, pick things up, handle them. The people that you're buying from should encourage you to do it. Don't hit on bare skin, it's generally frowned upon because actually we don't want you contaminating, for want of a better word, what your toys might be, but you should be encouraging people to have a go with these toys because they're an important connection. And that's how you build a relationship between you and your toy, is being happy and comfortable with it from the get-go. An interesting point of this is what's called affordance in design. Stupid one for you here. How many of you have walked up to a door before and pushed when you should have pulled? Yeah? Yeah? This is what's called rubbish affordance. You don't know what you're expected to do. Really good affordance is the opposite of that. When you pick up a chisel, most people don't pick up a chisel or a saw by the sharp bit, because the way we design it makes it blindingly obvious where your hand should go. And with toys, we try and do the same thing. It seems really silly, but it's obvious, isn't it? We hold it by the handle-shaped bit. Okay, take it a step further. It's thin in one direction, it's thick in the other. It means it sits in your hand nicely, and we have that affordance, that instinctive reaction that tells us how to use it. Affordance is an interesting one in design because actually, not to try and force a point here, good affordance is pre-negotiating consent, isn't it? If you look at a toy and it's blindingly obvious how it's going to be used, everyone's on the same page. Part of your consent discussions, part of your informed consent before a scene should be, how do we use this toy? What does it feel like? How's it going to behave? Things like that. And actually, good affordance does some of that negotiating for you. I don't want to sit in a dark, dimly lit club and have a 30-minute conversation about how a toy behaves. That is not what I am there for. Good affordance make it really blindingly obvious how a toy behaves, what it does, and how it should be used. And I think that's a key part that we sometimes miss. Obvious handles, obvious grips, obvious impact sites, so that we can really clearly go, oh yeah, I know how that's going to be used. I know how that's going to be used on me. I like my D4 paddles for that because it's kind of obvious, isn't it? They look horrible. I get that. They look really horrible. And it's kind of surprising to people that they're quite nice. They're quite massagey. But actually, in terms of affordances, this is so obvious, isn't it? The spiky bit is the bit that you do it with. It's really nice. It's really clear. And that's quite a fun way of like I said, pre-negotiating, having a conversation without having to have that conversation. You can use the other side. That is perfectly fine. You can do exactly what you want. But good design, exactly that. Good design gives us choices. Good design gives us options. If you're struggling to use something, you're running out of choices, you're running out of options, I guarantee anyone with a big kit bag has got something that sits in the bottom of it and that never comes out. I know I have. When I first got into it, I've got things that I bought because I went, oh yeah, that looks really cool. And now I look at it and I go, why did I ever buy that? What choice did I make there? And that's this good design thinking that I'm trying to throw at you here and make you think about, is actually, if we think about these few simple principles, how's it going to be used? How am I going to hold it? Is it intuitive, easy? Does it have good affordances? It makes that process of learning to use the toy, of negotiating for the toy, so much simpler, so much quicker, so much easier. I'd say that's my first big thing. When we talk about the feel of power and how we build connection in play, well-designed toys, well-afforded toys, so that we know how they're going to be used, keep you in the scene, keep you in the moment of play, as opposed to ones that take you out of it. And the crux of that is, you need to use them. You need to go up to someone's stall and say, can I pick this up? Can I handle it? Can I feel it? Can I play with it? Can I swing it? So that you have that knowledge to start with. So there's my top tip number one. Hopefully one that shouldn't be new to anyone, but I think it's worth saying again, because some people aren't so keen on it, but I think it's really, really important as a business and as a maker. Section 2, like I said, is materials and movement. I like this one because materials is interesting. We can so drastically change how a scene feels and how we interact with people and how we connect with people by changing the material of a toy. And I can make that instantly, blindingly obvious again with one example, which is, these are wax play knives, they're scrapers. They're not sharp, but actually, a wooden one versus one made of bronze. You walk through it really quickly, you walk through it really simply. These are very similar, the edge feels very similar, but one of these is warm. Our wooden one feels warm against the skin, and our bronze one feels cold. That hard, metallic coldness is very, very different in terms of the feeling, and the material drastically changes how this scene feels. And that, again, is building connection, isn't it? Building a relationship between you and the person that you're playing with. It will be a very different scene with a warm knife that actually you scrape it off and it's very sort of intimate and sensual compared to something that feels cold and clinical. And again, when we negotiate things, this is something that we can talk about and we can explore and we can discuss, is which of these do you prefer? Which of these is what you want? Is it aftercare and we want it to be warm and intimate? Is it part of the scene and we want it to be cold and rough, for example? So materials gives us another way that we can change very slight things in our scene and dramatically change the connection it builds, the feeling it builds, and things like that. Leather's an interesting one as well. Leather conforms, leather wraps. Wraps being the operative word here. If you're using dragon tail floggers, that moment where you hit a little bit high or something like that is a really big issue because there's some sensitive bits in there. As we see by our wonderful poster, we've got bits that we really don't want to hit. So leather is a lovely material for toys because it's got that warmth, that softness to it. But, and important to say, for those of you that might not be so comfortable with it, it runs risks in a slightly different way. Which is why, this feels very Blue Peter, doesn't it, when I'm reaching down into a box, which is why I do things like baby dragons. A, because baby dragon is the cutest name for a toy in the world, but B, because if we can make something that moves more predictably, that hits exactly the same place over and over again, it's going to be not necessarily safer, because I think branding something as safe or unsafe is potentially unhelpful in this world, but it's predictable. It's a short handle. I have big hands. It's a short handle that fits really nicely. It's a stiff leather compared to a normal dragon tail, so it stands up on its own, and it's short, at half the length of a standard dragon tail, which means, wonderfully, I can use it in a tiny little space. I could come over in this booth just here, and I can use this really happily. But also, because it's short and stiff, I can be unbelievably precise and controlled in a way that is much harder to do unless you're very experienced with those longer dragon tails. And that movement, that material choice of the thicker leather, the stiffer leather so that it moves differently, again, builds a very different toy. Removes some of the experiential requirements, shall we say, of a standard dragon tail. Builds up this sort of sensory design theory of actually, this should be easy for the top. We talk a lot about who's on this end of the toy, the bottom, how it's going to feel, what it's going to do. But actually, if we go to the other side of the toy and we go, right, who's using this? We talk about overwhelm, we talk about arousal levels, not that kind of arousal, the general mental arousal, mental stimulation. Human beings are really rubbish in a lot of ways. We have what's called an arousal curve. A little bit of interest, a little bit of, oh yeah, that's interesting, and our performance goes up. We can focus better. You're at work. If you're not interested in what you're doing, you're going to be rubbish at it. It's really easy, isn't it? Really obvious. So, we're doing our work, we're typing away, and suddenly someone puts the radio on behind us. Is it distracting? Probably not. Then someone starts talking to us. Oh, getting a bit dicey now. Then we get 37 emails come in that all need addressed. Your arousal level, the level of things going on around you, is suddenly much higher. And I could make you say it all together if you want, but are you going to be doing as good a job when the radio is playing, someone's talking to you and your email address is pinging every 30 seconds? No, you are not. So we have what's called an arousal curve. Little bit of arousal, little bit of stuff going on, and while performance goes up, we do good work. We get a bit higher, and it drops off of a cliff. This is a little bit of absolutely basic psychology, basic design theory, but something like this lowers our arousal, lowers the choices we have to make, lowers the experience requirement, because suddenly we don't have to think about the backswing, we don't have to think about the wrap. We can just tick, 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 and play really comfortably. I promise you it's still really sore. It has all the fun bits of a dragon tail with a little bit less of the wrappiness and the distance requirements and things like that. So we can, as a designer, make really simple choices in materials, the way things move, that change these things and increase connection. And again, our arousal's lower, we can focus more readily. If I don't have to make difficult choices about, oh, am I checking behind me, am I doing this? I'm so much more tuned into the person in front of me. Those micro reactions, those tiny little things, the flinches, the twitches that tell you what you're doing is working. And we all do it subconsciously after a while. It becomes second nature when you've played for someone for a little while. You can read them. But that shorthand takes time to develop. And I would consider something like this to be a way of building that shorthand. It takes away the difficult bits and leaves you with the things that build connection, the things that build intimacy, the things that make play fun for everyone. So I think, again, designers can solve problems here. Toy makers can solve problems here. They can make it so your toy box works better for you and everyone else. Oh, flip over the page. I'm going to say the last one on this sort of point before we move on to section 3 is elegance. I have a big thing about elegance and colour. Colour's an interesting one, isn't it? We look at a lot of kink stuff, it's all black, it's all red. I get where this comes from. I love history, I love queer design, queer punk. It's kind of in the name, isn't it? It'd be a bit sad if I missed all of that history out. If we want the history lesson, why are most kink things black leather? Oh, it's because it came from motorcycle culture, it came from uniform culture, and actually, it gave us safety through anonymity. If it was black leather, it didn't draw attention to you, then it went under the radar in times when it wasn't safe to be openly queer, openly kinky, things like that. So kink has a history of very subdued colour schemes. I get it, I understand why. It makes perfect sense to me. And we go countercultural, and we go in the 1970s. We design the pride flag. We do rainbow. And we go, yes, we are here. Brilliant. Love it. Rainbow. I think kink hasn't caught up. So I challenge you to do something a bit interesting. I've got black stuff in my kit bag. A lot of the upholstery work I do on furniture is black leather because it's what people want, is the honest truth. And we talk a lot about black leather and black and kink. I think it's power through austerity. You're going, right, I am powerful, I am the top, and you can tell that because my kit is black and it's intimidating and it's scary. Tell you what, I think I'm still scary with this bright pink and purple thing. I think that's still pretty scary. I think the gorgeous red and orange ombre is still pretty scary, isn't it? I challenge you to have power through personality. Force of personality, force of power, colour choice as what makes you powerful, what makes you the top you want to be. And I get it. Like I said, I completely get it. I get the history lesson. I understand where it comes from. I reject that. I reject that as a designer. I reject that as a person. Countercultural. We want to do stuff different. We're all living a lifestyle that at the end of the day would be considered countercultural to a lot of people. And actually, I think it's really interesting to explore where these almost biases in that have come from. I'm not telling you to go out and throw your whole kit bag away, obviously not. But it's an interesting one to think about. Why we make the choices we do, why we go for black leather, red, things like that. And yeah, it was safety through anonymity. It was stuff that we didn't have to worry about someone seeing because black meant uniforms, black meant workwear, and that was a safe way of existing as a kinky, as a queer person, when it wasn't safe to be those things openly. Fascinating. There's your little free history lesson for you. A little bit of colour theory in there as well. We love it. I love colour stuff. Colourful stuff is brilliant. If you've got a bright colour palette on your toys, it's just different, isn't it? I turn up at events, and the number of times I've got quite a lot of customers that do a lot of stuff in the London sort of Spanko scene as such. And I had one of them talking to me the other day at an event, and he went, I love my kit bag with your toys because I open it and everyone goes, that's different. And yes, that's exactly what I want. That's perfect. That's where we want to be. We want people to look at it and go, yeah, that's cool. That's what we want as designers. That's how we make good, cool design choices. Point 3 from me then. My third little bit for you today is design as a relationship. I'm going to give you a name here. There's a lovely, fascinating designer called Dieter Rams who came up with several principles of design. And actually, Dieter Rams' principle of design is that good design is long-lasting. Good design is long-lasting. It's a simple concept, really simple concept realistically, isn't it? Think about bits of good design that you know. Empire State Building. Does it still look quite cool? Yeah, it does. It was built nearly 100 years ago. There's a weird thought, isn't it? Great Depression in the US. It was built nearly 100 years ago, and it still looks cool. Art Deco design, Art Nouveau design, things like that. These classic design movements, good design lasts for a long time. It's visually strong. It has that strength of personality, that strength of character that we were just talking about. Good design is long-lasting. I think elegance, simple curves, flowing lines, classy materials, things like bronze. Humans love bronze. It's why we make medals out of it. It looks nice. Walnut, that gorgeous dark wood. So materials, shapes, lines, all make design that lasts for a long time. Toys that last for a long time. Where we have with this as well is materials and toys that should last a long time. You will notice if you go up to my stall that I don't have plastic toys. For those of you that came to my workshop a little while ago, I had a big conversation about the safety of plastic and things like that, which is a whole separate concept. Human beings have been using plastic for, 70 or 80 years, and we've made so many billions of tons of it that it's in all of the food that we eat, it's in all of our hearts, it's in all of our eyes. That's kind of scary. I slightly object to making toys out of plastic. Do plastic things last as well as wood, metal? No, they probably don't. Plastic is not a fantastically nice material when we talk about body safety and things like that, which we should all be talking about. So actually, when we talk about long-lasting design, material choice is a really important one. Wood, metal, leather. These materials are the stock and standard for a reason. They last, and they patina, and they age well. And that's a really key point as well. They age well. My toys like this, the leather will get softer. It will change color as it absorbs the oil from your hands and from other people as you clean it. The wood, over time, it won't happen quickly because the finish I use is an industrial finish. It is an incredibly hard-wearing finish, but it will patina. It will change. It will look different in 10 years' time to it does now. Good design should be long-lasting. You should want to see that toy, and everybody that makes things should want to see those toys in 10, 15 years' time. I offer a lifetime warranty on toys. If it breaks, and I've never had one break, you tell me, we'll sort it. It is that simple. I had someone recently that left their kit bag. They went to Femdom paintballing, if any of you do Femdom South. They went to Femdom paintballing and left their kit bag in the rain for 6 hours. And all of their toys got soaked through, and I got a refinishing job. Some of the toys were mine. They'd been out in the rain for 6 hours. They were largely okay, but I also got every toy they'd got from someone else and got asked to recondition them. And I stand by my toys. I refinished the ones I made for free. Because, yeah, I'm not saying I'd do it again, but actually you should stand by your toys. Good design should last a long time. It should be long lasting. It should be well designed. The material should be good. And the person that makes it should stand behind it, should stand there and go, yep, that's mine. And personally for me, plastics don't do that. Sustainability has to be such a core part of what we talk about as designers and users that we need to do it. Taking that a step further, we kind of have to talk about inclusivity in kink as well, I think. Inclusivity is a really interesting point. Again, not to labour the point, inclusivity is ethical. It's an ethical point, isn't it? Actually, if we design spaces that people can't use, that is not including everyone that could be in our community. If we make toys that are heavy, that are hard to use, do they need to be? Or do we, sometimes as a community, substitute in our brains heavy equals better? Heavy equals more aggressive, more toppy. Actually, does it need to be heavy to do what you want it to do? Because a heavy toy is one that not everyone can use. A toy with bad grip is not something that everyone can use. And I think when we talk about inclusivity, that's a really interesting point to bring up, is that actually good toys, good design should include people. I do a lot of furniture, and furniture is a fascinating one for this. When we design furniture, so often we miss out on these key pieces of information that make it accessible for everyone. I made some couches a little while ago, and I had never considered this. This is someone with a lot of design experience. But I made one because it looked cool. That's the honest truth. I saw it online and I went, I want to make that. And someone then commissioned me for one and said, this is brilliant. I have limited mobility, and having something that's got a high end, a low end, a dip in the middle, enables me to do things I could never otherwise do. And inclusivity in design is an interesting point, because for that person, this simple bit of design, not simple to upholster, but simple to design, completely changed the relationship that they had in their dynamic and their scene. It opened up possibilities that they didn't have previously. And as designers, we kind of need to be doing this. We need to be thinking about how do we build furniture, toys that include everyone. Like I said, for me, is it heavy? Is the handle comfortable? Is it an appropriate size? Someone with small hands, I'm probably looking at you here, I'm sorry. How many stores do you go to where you pick something up and the handle's like this for you, where you can't grip it? Yeah, and I fundamentally reject this as a concept. And the horrible truth of it is that most stalls are run and most stuff is made by someone that looks broadly like me. 6'4", built like a shed, with hands like spades. I can still use this lovely handle really comfortably. It's sized to fit me. I am the 95th percentile. I am the largest person who's likely to be using my toy. But it's really good for small hands as well, because we've got this pinch point, we've got a gentle swell, we've got a size that's appropriate. So as designers, we make good choices, and suddenly our design is inclusive. It helps the community step forwards and open up to people that it might not otherwise open up for. And I personally, and that's a personal opinion, think that's really, really important. Similar ones is this, when we talk about design as a relationship. This is one of my favorite toys. No, simple, right? I think this is an unbelievably underrated toy, and I don't see anything particularly like it on the market. We talk about design as a relationship. We talk about how we build intimacy and connection in our toys. Something like this, that we can nestle in the palm of our hand, that we can warm up with, we can step back, we can drop back, and we can swing. Something that allows us to be close, to build connection, to look at reactions, to adjust, to moderate pressure and intensity, is a fantastic way of using that design to build relationships for customers. And that is what you have to think about as a good designer, is actually, how do I make my customers have the best experience possible? I love toys like this. I think this is a surprisingly underrated toy. When I bought these out, I had a flurry of orders for them, and they sort of slowed down. I've not done any publicity on them in a while. I think these are a lovely, lovely toy. Because like I said, in terms of an intimate toy, something you can use really close, really up close and personal, that physical connection versus something at a distance that's almost depersonalized. You don't have that closeness, that warmth in the same way. And that, again, is an interesting conversation to build here when we talk about how are our toys to be used. How do we ensure that the products we sell, the products that we buy, help us design a scene? Because that's what all of you do as tops. I say all of you, you're not all tops, I'm sure. But how do you design a scene? How do you structure that scene in your head to build connection, to build intimacy, to build a relationship there? Because I think that's a really good point to consider for you, because you're all doing just as much design work as I am. I make the toys, but you're using them. You're choosing how they're designed, how they're used for you. There's an interesting designer called Donald Norman who did 3 levels of response. I will quote this because I never get the names of these right. 3 levels of response, and you'll think about these and it will logically make sense. We have what's called a visceral response. Here's an interesting reaction. What's the visceral response to this? Fear. Fear. The large person holding the pointy blade evokes a visceral fear response. We get a visceral response from shape. We get a visceral response from colour. So it's a really interesting thing of, when you bring out a toy, do people go, oh God, or oh yeah? For those of you that walk past my stall, the ducks. That's my favourite one because it's funny. Actually, it's a great toy. It's a brilliant warm-up toy. Really, really nice and thuddy. But it's funny. You pull it out and people go, really? And it's an interesting reaction builder. That visceral reaction is not one of fear. It's one of intrigue and interest. And we can think about that when we design our kit bag. So we have our visceral reaction. We have our behavioural reaction. Actually, does it do what you expect? Crux of this would be something like a flogger. Does it feel as you would expect? Is it fairly nice, fairly good to use? As the person being hit, have you got a predictable rhythm? Or is it dunk, dung dung? What's happening there? Is it predictable? Does it allow you to have that behavioural rhythm? Does it feel how you would expect? So we have our visceral reaction, fear, interest. We have our behavioural reaction. Oh yeah, that's what I expect, that's what I understand. I made one of these a little while ago from Biothane. Biothane is a polyurethanized webbing. used in horse tack because it doesn't absorb water. It doesn't age like leather does, it doesn't crack like leather does. It's a vegan alternative to leather. I'd make a few toys, the rope whip or the biothane whip being one of them. But yeah, it's an interesting material. And I don't make them to stock, the biothane floggers, for the pure and simple reason they don't do what you'd expect. Floggers, oh yeah, quite nice, quite gentle. A biothane flogger is like a flogger turned up to 100. They are really sore. They are not a warm-up toy. So I've sold a few of them. I sold them to people who knew what they were getting into, who I could have conversations with about what this toy did and how it behaved. But it didn't do what your brain, as someone that's used a flogger before, thought it would. And that's the reason I don't stock them, because I don't think it's particularly good for me to give a customer who potentially hasn't used one of these exact toys before something that they aren't going to know what it's going to do. That behavioral reaction doesn't match up to the visceral reaction. And that mismatch, that imbalance, creates tension in a scene, creates unease, because suddenly you don't know what's happening with the other person. And our final one is the reflective reaction. When you look back, when you reflect on what's happened, did you feel seen, understood? Did it do what you wanted it to? Things like that. I would say that a lot of the time, aftercare fills this role. We reflect in that moment on what happened and how the toys behaved, how they did what they did. But actually, like we said, good design, good afforded toys that do what you expect, like the phrase that I used earlier, are some sort of pre-negotiated consent. But they also help with our reflective reaction. Something like this, and our reflective reaction tends to be, oh yeah, it felt very close, it felt very intimate, it felt very together, in a way that stepping back and using a rope whip probably will not feel intimate and close and connected and together. So those three levels of reaction are interesting. Visceral, is it scary? Is it interesting? Behavioral, does it do what you expect? And reflective, did we get what we wanted out of it? Did we get the feeling, the sensation, the emotion that we were looking for? And those three are interesting. We can explore our kit bags with those, and we can instantly start to look at it and go, fear, fear, interest, interest, and then start to match up whether the toys do what you think they should. Because again, that starts to help you build a relationship with your kit bag and with the person you're going to be using them on. Because, realistically, that's how you make good scenes, isn't it? Everyone knows what's going to happen, to an extent. And you plan the scene and you do what you've planned. We don't step outside of that line without negotiation and consent. Because tops want to flow. You want toys that work how you want. You want toys that allow you to use them in the way that you want to. So, closing thought from me. I'm going back to Bauhaus here. Bauhaus design theory. Design is social responsibility made visible. There's my quote of the day for you. Design is social responsibility made visible. Are we, as designers, being socially responsible in a way that is blindingly obvious? I think I, as a designer, try to be as much as possible. I make responsible choices. I try and think about how my toys will be used and how I make them safe, effective, enjoyable for all of the people that are going to come into contact with them. I think everyone in this room, as someone that plays with these toys, is designing scenes, is designing their kit bag in a socially responsible way. We're thinking about how our toys behave. We're not doing things like going to a builder's merchant's, picking up a scaffold pole and going, yeah, all right, and cracking on. We're doing things socially responsibly. But thinking about that with a real structure in that way is really, really helpful. We're all designing something in our own special ways. I make the toys, I design the toys. You're building a kit bag, you're designing scenes. We're designing things for connection. We're designing things to build relationships with the people we play with. And what I want you to think about is the relationship that you build with the toys in your bag. Actually, they should mean something to you. So my challenge for you today is, Go home and throw away the one that sits collecting dust in the bottom of your kit bag. Or stick it on FetLife and say, right, who would like this? Cover shipping. Throw it away. Because every time you see it in the bottom of your kit bag, there's probably that little voice in your head that goes, oh, I spent 30 quid on that. Or, oh, I've not used that in ages, but I don't really want to. So my challenge to you is this. Go home and take it out. If you really want my challenge to you, it's go and replace it. Do what we've just talked about. Pick it up, feel the toys that are here today, and replace it with one that means something to you, that lets you feel powerful, that lets you build those relationships. Think about it. Questions from anyone? I'm quite happy to take some questions if you've got them. If not, yeah? The flogger, what material is it? So this is a suede leather. These are 25mm falls, so they're quite thick falls, and then this is a lovely two-tone hickory handle, so hickory, heartwood, and sapwood, so you get that nice two-tone contrast in there. And then my little secret in the back is we have these little end caps that are like a marbled galaxy with all metallics and colours. So several different materials in there, but yeah, pink suede and hickory on this one. Any more for any more? Oh, quiet this time. Very quiet. Wonderful. Excellent. Right. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Thank you very much for your time. Yeah, go for it.